Will we go back to normal? Probably not quite. What will it mean for the city, for the real estate provision of office space in particular? Will that decline radically? How about residential space in the center of the city, close to public transport hubs? Maybe there will be re-evaluation of those values. Probably we are up for the re-evaluation of all values, because our patterns of life will change. Will we move back to the suburbs? Will inner cities become kind of bleak and empty? Or will we move into the cities to avoid public transport and still go to the office, walk to the office? Will there be walkability? Some of us move out to the suburbs and increase our houses and they become places of work. That, none of what I'm talking about here is at first glance compatible with the structure of the city and the planning regimes and rules and regulations, and the attempt by planners to dictate programs. Live work. At the moment there's no proper category like this, and it demands 2 entrances, for instance. Can they be post-fitted? Do we really must demand any such rules, regulations, standards? I say no. I say we don't know where we want to move and what repercussions will develop, which jobs will have to go also, and which new jobs will become available, which new kinds of services and offerings will be required and preferred.
It's very unfortunate because everything that we had learned about human-centric design is now going to change, and I feel that as a designer, as an architect, as a problem solver, it just takes the emotions out of design.
As architects, we are used to a construction cycle that is continuous. But as we can see recently, construction has been the least priority in a world that is trying to lock down, to clamp down on this virus. We are starting to question the nature of our practice, both as a business and as a contribution to a world that is infected with a disease like COVID-19. Many of the buildings that we have built in the last 100 years has been driven by urbanization and the need to create spaces that are there to produce, for people to work in, and for people to live in. But as we can see, the typology of what architecture has become has changed significantly. More or less, architecture is now back to being a shelter that is able to keep us safe, but also to keep us and our relationships alive through technology. Many of us in our practices are both working from home as well as here in the studio, but we're not able to do it in the old way. We must collaborate in new ways.
We need many more degrees of freedom. We need planning freedom, we need occupational freedom, we need to be free to use our offices and houses the way we would see fit, and adapt, convert, pack in or not, in ways which allow the market to become that experimentation field and discovery procedure, and as well that selective and filtering domain in which ideas are projected and killed and reprojected, that creative destruction and creation of new opportunities. We need market freedoms. That's the only way we can make these adjustments and adaptations without having a downsliding prosperity trajectory.
Businesses and services and professions will have to define the size of their organization. Think about the size of the organization first, and then define within that size how many people need to be working together at one point of time, or staggered timing, or be traveling, or be off-site, or work from home. After that is defined, I feel that while offices will not shrink immediately, within existing offices, there'll definitely be some change in the internal planning where people may be sitting apart. We may go full circle back into cabins and cubicles, and the open office where people work cheek by jowl and were sitting in meeting rooms all day long will undergo a major change. In fact, meeting will become virtual. And instead of having large community cafeterias, we may end up having smaller eating rooms, smaller breakout spaces. So this whole thing about getting maximum people on seats in one large office will probably undergo a major change.
Luckily for us, our office is a little extra generous. So there's enough space between people, even at their current desks, which exceed 6 feet. So that's all right. But there are protocols in place from entry to exit, and even periodical hand washing, sanitization, masks, etc., which we're going to put into play. And we're going to deploy one person as a COVID marshal in rotation, whose job will be, only job for that day, will be to take responsibility that everyone follows the protocols which are laid down. I don't think anyone will not want to follow them, but it's just a question of habit. So until these sort of norms become habit, you'll need someone to kind of keep reminding people, and that's what the COVID marshal is going to be doing.
And work-wise, the home office will take a larger place in our society. This is the starting point of Aula Modular, one of our current projects. The trend of working from home is on the rise as people no longer accept to cram into public transportations or wait hours and hours in traffic jams to get to their workplaces, especially since we are now aware of the polluting consequences.
Yes, and another consequence of this social phenomena is that buildings that were so far used as office will need to be reprogrammed for other purposes. They might be the root for the new topics of reflection for future architectural projects.
I think one of the main challenges we're facing is to create a sense of positivity and bring the whole team together, because we're not used to working apart. We're used to being in an office space and using each other's energy to motivate ourselves. And I think that's a very important factor that we've been missing in the last 2 months.
Magazine is a teamwork activity, and for everyone to be working remotely and to be coordinated and to access the data which is on the office servers. So that has been a challenge, but we're getting around. It's just a new, it's interesting how, and it's amazing how the human mind adapts.
The coronavirus pandemic is transforming how we live and work in ways we could have hardly imagined at the beginning of 2020. We've been home about 70 days, and now with the lockdown being partially lifted in countries where we are present and working, we need to be very, very careful of our health and healthcare of the people who work at our sites, in our offices, and whom we associate with and whom we meet.